TV. The world is thinking.
What's a black swan? Before the discovery of Australia, we had no reasons to believe that swans could be of any other color but white, or people in the old world. And effectively, there was an expression in medieval England. You'd sooner see a black swan than, say, for example, it was like saying when pigs fly, or when when I don't know, when George Bush does something intelligent or something. There was immediately exception. So there was an expression until we saw Australia, and effectively, the sighting of a single bird destroyed millennia of confirmation. So it was posed as a logical problem by showing that there's no reason, you cannot rule out a black swan because you haven't seen any. Okay, so my problem is not a logical question. My black swan is an event. It's not a bird. So, and it's an event that has three properties. The first property, it is hard to predict. Very difficult to predict based on information. Am I standing in the right spot? Okay. Based on information before its occurrence, prior information, based on historical information. You have here a sample of black swans. The most interesting one is the tie. Someone's going to forecast the future. We have to forecast that human beings, 2,000 years away, would constrict their blood supply with this device, for example, okay, and attend meetings, okay. So that's very difficult to predict. The computer was a black swan. It changed the world, and nobody thought the computer could do anything. You know, it was initially used for combinatorics. I mean, the Watson from IBM did not think that this tool could have any use. The rise of religions, black swans, totally unpredictable. Harry Potter is a black swan. A lot of cultural phenomena are black swans. To me, the most significant black swan, and the one I'm going to focus next for a few minutes, is the First War. The First War we had after Napoleon, we thought for about 100 years that the world became civilized, and that, you know, people became conscious of the need for peace. And you had this devastating war, the biggest war, something that destroyed, and of course it came in 2 volumes. You had volume 1 and then you had a sequel. So here we have black swans, events of low predictability, high consequence. But the most vicious part is the following one, is that before the fact, they're extremely predictable, but after the fact, you know what? We saw them coming. So we have, this is what I call the retrospective distortion, is these events are prospectively unpredictable, retrospectively predictable. Why? We even have disciplines to give us the illusion of understanding the world, you see? We have disciplines that make us misunderstand the world by giving us this illusion of predictability. History, for example, economics, other such things.
Because this is something that came up multiple times in the book. There are a lot of misconceptions around a black swan and what is a black swan. I know there are also gray swans. Could you clarify that for the folks?
Okay, so let me explain the first thing that I can detect if a person has problems if they ask for a precise definition. Like physicists, when we talk to them about a black swan, they say, I need a precise definition of a black swan. And these I know will have problems in real life because they lack that notion was called theory of mind, of understanding that a black swan depends on the observer. So let's say that September 11 was a black swan that is an unexpected, completely unexpected tail event with large consequences. It's completely unexpected for me. it was unexpected for you. Maybe Scott, knew something. I don't know. But for the person on a plane, it was not unexpected. So that's what I call the turkey problem. You see, the turkey is going to have a surprise on Thanksgiving minus a few days, but the butcher will not have a surprise. So the whole idea is you have butchers and turkeys in life. So for me, a black swan, it depends on the observer.
Next question, if I may, Jim, real quick.
Mhm.
What is a black swan event?
Good question. That is a good question. A black swan event is supposed to be a mathematically improbable event, something that comes out of the blue that could not be predicted, by any sort of known scientific method generally, that comes across usually as a unique combination of a series of failures or smaller disasters that adds up to a larger one. For example, I will give you Fukushima and the Japanese earthquake, right? There were a bunch of things that had to go all completely fucking sideways in order for that thing to get to an almost meltdown. Um, and, so some people might argue, well, an earthquake isn't a black swan. No, but an earthquake plus all of these other kinds of, and I won't get into the details, but similar to Chernobyl, actually, a bunch of little things all went wrong all together at the same time, and it added up to a complete catastrophe. So that's what's supposed to be a black swan event, is something you can't predict, that came out of nowhere, a freak storm, a rogue wave. There are lots of examples of it in nature, but what they are trying to call a black swan is really just an intentional increase in chaos with the hope that it creates a disaster, which is very different from, oh geez, maybe something completely mathematically improbable might happen tomorrow. They're just completely abusing the term because it sounds cool, and all of that.
Jim, if I may ask one more question, please.
Last one, yes.
Thank you, sir. What is I heard somebody talking about this. What is a black swan operation in terms of special forces? I heard somebody referring to this the other night.
That's fucking bullshit.
That sounds made up. That sounds made up.
Yeah, there was a in some Flynn space, maybe it was in Ben's, maybe he knows. There was some in 2017. There was some NATO thing called the Black Swan report or some shit like that, and so everybody is like, oh, see, NATO planned the black swan, or it's that kind of thing where somebody used that word somewhere in a report somewhere, and all of a sudden it means there's a giant conspiracy to create a black swan, and none of it makes any fucking sense.
I just think it's ripe for weaponization of the narrative. So the longer it takes to get a full answer, the more theories will happen. And so I'm hoping people have learned that that little information allows for conspiracies to grow very quickly. So hopefully somebody will have some kind of briefing or something at some point soon. But I don't really, I'm not, I don't like to kind of guess ahead of time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the problem basically with this situation is that it's in Russia, right? It's in Moscow, and there is just no way we're ever going to know the full picture, right? I mean, it will know more and things will be, leaked out of there, but the entire, Russian propaganda machine is already blaming it on Ukraine, despite the fact that they blamed it on ISIS, like right before that, and then right after that, right?
Yeah.
To your
I'm
point,
seeing the CIA. That's what I'm
well,
seeing a lot of.
that's because this, right. So the CIA either controls ISIS or controls the Ukrainian government or whatever, right? I've also seen a lot of Mossad, because you have to blame the Jews somehow, right? Like, it's
Well,
Mossad.
and the left wing, yeah, the left wing faction of that, yeah,
Right.
right.
I'm just
Not
saying,
not Likud. It's not Likud. It's Mossad, right?
well, I mean, Likud and Mossad are kind of both, at least have the right wing reputation, right? But either way, it's all just fucking bullshit, right?
Oh, I'm
What,
seeing a lot more Obama too. I see a lot of Obama right now.
right? And that's interesting and will lead to some other things. Why Obama, right? Because there was a big sort of propaganda push to make Obama seem weak on ISIS, right? And a lot of that happened, in a interesting time frame, and somebody that everybody who follows me knows. I follow Mike Flynn, and Mike Flynn tells a story that he got fired because he disagreed with Obama about ISIS, because ISIS thought it was the JV team, and I told them ISIS were, the real killers, and that was why he got fired, which is nonsense. He got fired 6 weeks after Putin invaded Crimea, and the Pentagon didn't fucking say anything. But I just find it really interesting that the bad guy in this situation is the same, bad guy that Mike Flynn was fighting overseas, that, you know, um, is constantly the boogeyman for the Christo fascists, um, you know, uh,
Crusaders.
crusaders is exactly where I was going with it. It feels like another manufactured sort of flashpoint in this performance of the end times, right? They're like, oh, we have to have, the Muslims and the Jews have to be fighting in Israel, so let's create a bunch of conflict there, and now Putin needs to radicalize and mobilize his people, so he's going to make it, the Muslims attacking the Christians and the poor white Christians in Moscow, which is literally what his speech said, or and is so it's like it just seems so fucking obvious that we're all just getting jerked around by people who are weaponizing, these ancient, religious bigotries. Let's, call it what it is. Um, to basically, feed the entire world's to oligarchs, right? I mean, you look at who is really behind this. It's about tearing up the world and ripping it into parts and selling it. Um, you know, that's why you have Eric Prince and all of these mercenaries and paramilitaries, because they see the blood in the water. They see the sort of fabric of liberal democracy being torn up, not just in America but around the world, and they're exploiting those to, you know, eh, more or less turn up the soil so they could pull the gold and diamonds and oil and whatever the fuck they want out of it, because there's nobody left to, give a shit about the country anymore. And, they've turned their fucking eyes on America. That is what they're trying to do, what they've been doing to all these other countries around the world for a very long time. And, it, they're coming really frighteningly close. And the thing that is really on my mind right now is just the sort of alternate reality that not just the right wing puts out there, but the media, the corporate fucking media that is constantly feeding us these stories about Donald Trump and his fucking bond. And, like, when he is the shiny object they want us to look at while they commit transnational organized crime under our noses, right? It's like, look at Donald Trump. While I'm building a white nationalist army, while I'm building a fucking network devoted to pouring Kremlin propaganda into our population's mind, right? Like, it just continuously boggles my mind that the sort of operation, the information operation to turn this into a pissing contest between Donald Trump and and the liberals. It just yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, my opinion of what happened in Moscow is that there's literally zero chance that happened without Russian intelligence knowledge. That The reports are that it was 90 minutes from the time the bullets started flying before the FSB showed up, um, even though they're a couple minutes away. Um, None of it makes any fucking sense. Spectacular giant fire with hundreds of dead right in the middle of Moscow. By the way, at the Crocus is a development of Aras Agarilov. I think that's right. Famously was in Trump Tower in summer of 2016 and had lots and lots of friendly communications with the Trump campaign. Happens to be the guy who owns the complex where the horrible massacre took place. So personally, um, given Putin's record, and he has a record of murdering his civilians in the hundreds in order to capture power. Um, you know, uh, somebody is going to have to prove to me that it wasn't Vladimir Putin. Like that's just every single thing I've seen lines up.
Well, we know for certain that there was a terrorist attack in a suburban city of Moscow region. We know that many people were killed. Um, and we know that certain suspects have been arrested by the Putin regime and are claimed to be responsible. We all know that an offshoot of Islamic State has claimed responsibility and also provided horrific video in a follow up to it. We know that Tajik nationals were arrested by the Putin regime and tortured. And we also know that the Putin regime is blaming Ukraine for this. So this is what we know. That this attack was made about 12 hours after a massive terrorist attack by Russia on civilians and civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. In particular, an attempt to destroy the hydroelectric dam at Dnipro and cause a second environmental humanitarian catastrophe by flooding the Dnieper River. And the timing of it is to turn the page from that. We're not talking about Dnipro. We're not talking about the strike that was made in Kharkiv so that it is without power, or now it's under power blackouts and so on. So we're not talking about these terrorist attacks, and we're talking about this.
Um, so I spend a lot of my time on American propagandists. um, learning what they're doing and hopefully trying to expose some of the things that they do. Um, Immediately, the entire right or a very large section of the right wing jumped on top of Putin's lies that it was Ukraine that perpetrated this massacre in Moscow, despite the fact that everyone knows that ISIS had taken credit for it, et cetera, et cetera.
So personally, given Putin's record, and he has a record of murdering his civilians in the hundreds in order to capture power, um, you know, uh, somebody is going to have to prove to me that it wasn't Vladimir Putin. Like that's every single thing I've seen lines up. What Putin needed, at least in my view, was a rationalization to go to a total war, sort of Machiavellian scenario with his population. Um, and the thing that I'm not sure about yet is, how much of that move, assuming it was a move, was, out of desperation to kind of keep control of his population, or whether he is planning on something uglier and more aggressive, and needs a rationalization for it. It can always be both, but um, you know, to me, it fills both needs. I'm just worried that between the obvious um, intentional organization, coordination, and incitement of a large white nationalist sort of paramilitary cult out there, in America, it concerns me that and all the various talk of black swans and all this shit, that they are planning some kind of uh, scenario that both sets us back in America, and also wield some kind of blow over in Ukraine.
What mystifies me is that our intelligence services can warn Putin ahead of time that a terrorist attack was happening on his soil. But they refuse to warn Americans that we're being attacked by Putin's information war. All day, every single day, I track it constantly.
Yeah.
And I know it's not necessarily, your expertise, but I'm very curious what your thoughts are about why our government, our intelligence community, our military refuses to recognize this threat for what it is, which is a very deeply dangerous, subversive psychological warfare campaign that is, in my view, captured somewhere around a third of the country. And I don't understand why we haven't warned, explained, or pushed back in any way on this, at least in my view.
Well, I don't know it in as much detail as you are. It's not my particular focus, and so, but I can't help but look at it in a broader perspective. I've as in in my life, I've grown to admire so much about the United States, and one of them is how the United States has managed to successfully institutionalized ideas about liberty and so on, and build a enduring democratic institutions to sustain that. And that's been incredibly admirable. And a kind of ingrained tolerance, things like freedom of speech and so on. But the consequence of that is the United States has historically been really bad at dealing with actual treason. And and because it just can't fit somehow. And you thought, that's very surprising, because it's such a patriotic country with such a national feeling. And don't forget, national feeling in the United States is based on ideas. It's not based on ethnicity. Oh, we all are from the same ethnic group. That's not the United States at all. It's always been the nation of ideas, which is why the American dream is written in capital letters, and there's been successful, and it's just so bad at treason.
It's incredible. Like, so we had this whole, like, Black Swan's been trending all over the fucking universe for days now, right? And I'll give you one reason: Mike Flynn. Dude, since last August, has been pushing that meme into the Quniverse every single time the motherfucker gets on anything. And he got that thing going in August, and for progressively over time, it has gotten more and more sort of embedded in people's minds. And then all of a sudden, the thing goes bonkers because of Baltimore. Flynn has the most viral tweet on the planet about it, and everybody totally fucking misses it. Everybody misses it. The one place that wrote about Flynn at all used a disinformation agent as their source.
Oh my God.
It's a fucking mess. Just to point out that there was a huge terrorist attack on Ukraine's infrastructure 12 hours before the terror attack that happened in Moscow at, by the way, Trump's buddies, fucking the same place where the 2013 Miss Universe pageant was held. Same exact theater.